very large acreage site. It was previously the home of a church. We will be utilizing part of that existing parking lot and adding additional parking for the second building if so approved.
Okay. Any questions for the gentleman? All right,
Thank
thank you. Okay, once again, do we have anyone in opposition to the application today? Okay, with that, the deliberation and public comment is concluded. Chair, entertain a motion?
I vote to approve with with the stipulations. Board approval required the following conditions.
It's not contrary to public interest, special conditions exist. In spirit chapter shall be observed, substantial justice done to the applicant surrounding the neighborhood by granting the variance. Okay. With the conditions as listed by staff. Okay. Where's the applicant? You already went to the back? Are you in agreement with staff's conditions? Okay. All right, the applicant is in agreement with the conditions. Chair has a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, let's go to application 3, 6581 regarding 664 Schillinger Road South. If the applicant's rep will come to the podium, please. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Gregory Davis. I'm employed by Thomas Sign and Awning Company at 4590 118th Avenue North in Clearwater, Florida. I'm here to represent the applicant in their request for the sign variance for this particular Wawa gas station to be on the corner of
Okay.
Old Government and Challenger Road. In our request, we are requesting some additional wall signs and additional freestanding sign that we might address our concerns at this location with safety and visibility. As you can see, the site sits on the corner of Old Government, Challenger South. What we are proposing and asking that we be allowed to do is to install two additional wall signs and, more than anything else, a freestanding sign on the elevation that faces Old Government Road. We are asking for this additional freestanding sign that we might be able to tone down or decrease some of our concerns with the general public being able to access the property off of Old Government Road. The site plan, as you can see, shows two ingress and egress locations on Old Government Road, but our concern is that we be allowed to place a sign at this particular location that the general public might be able to note and identify the location before they get on top of the site itself. Visited the site, spent an hour or so there at the corner trying to get some idea and notice the flow of traffic along Old Government Road. Old Government Road, it appears, seems to back up at some point during the day. So what we're concerned about, number one, is that we be able to give the general public identification that this Wawa site is there by that additional freestanding sign. And number two, that we be able to notify the general public of that locations for easier and safer access onto the property. When you look at this site and the main sign that was going to be placed out on the main thoroughfare, Challenger, there is difficulty with the general public being able to turn left into the property. So the second freestanding sign on Old Government Road will give the general public better access to the location from Old Government Road rather than them going to the traffic light to turn back left to turn back into the property. Again, our concern is early visibility to the location, with the idea that the sooner we can get the general public and those who need to access the site into the property, that it'll be a great safety feature for law enforcement, whether it's in need of health aid, deliveries, and everything that's coming in off of Old Government Road will give the traffic along Selinger better access to the property from Old Government than trying to make a left-hand turn into the property from the main thoroughfare. Again, there's a sign that we're proposing on that Old Government area. Each sign that we're proposing is proportional to its location. We are requesting additional signage, number of signs, not extended or over square footage. I think everything that we are proposing is within the qualifications for overall square footage, and hope that this board will allow us the additional signage.
Okay, do we have any questions of the board for the applicant's rep? So the price sign, and I have to go back to my rendering here. For the fuel price pylon sign that's west Old Government Street at the lift station,
Yes,
I'm not sure, based on the proximity where that is in relation to the lift station and to the other businesses, how that's going to help, why it wouldn't be further towards Schillinger Road. It seems like it's a little far back on the site.
for back on the site as far as,
It's a little far west. and
yes, sir.
I would suspect that that center entrance would end up being more beneficial for first responders and patrons. I'm just wondering why they chose that location.
Why they chose that location further east as far as that location for the freestanding sign.
Yes, sir.
That was my understanding was a better location as far as the visibility traveling along Old Government Road. We thought if we placed a sign there that would give the general public a better visibility issue with locating the site and perhaps using that as an ingress, egress, or using the one that's further up the road in order to safely access the site.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions of the board once again? All right. Do we have anyone else that's in support of the application would like to speak at this time? All right, if you'll have a seat. Do we have anyone here in
Thank you.
opposition? Thank you. Anyone in opposition to the application? Okay, for the record, we have no one in opposition. That'll conclude our public hearing on this application. I'm still not sure about that second pylon in that location, if it really benefits the applicant. Between that and the other businesses that might obscure it. But with that, Chair, entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval based upon findings of facts A through C and with the conditions 1 through 10.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Any further discussion? Yes.
Oh, was I looking at the wrong one? Okay.
And
A through C.
The freestanding and the wall sign?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have a motion to approve all as requested, no conditions. All right, and I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. All right, we're on application 6582 regarding 556 Shady Oak Drive. If the applicant will come to the podium, please.
Hello, my name's Brian Mazel. I'm here on the application number 4. Kind of the backstory on this application is that my wife and I purchased this lot with anticipating building a house on it. This is at the bottom of Spring Hill, geographically in the city between Old Shell Road and Spring Hill Avenue. It's probably the easternmost point because the backyards of Shady Oak Drive, Shady Oak Drive back up to the Interstate Service Road. All those properties, all those houses along that entire stretch access Shady Oak Drive for their front yard. There are no driveways in the back. When we purchased the property, those lots in there are very old. Houses are very old. It was a meets and bounds description. So before the city could issue a building permit, they required a legal lot of record. So we went through this long process of filing a 1-lot subdivision, of which we did successfully. And within the requirements of the staff recommendation, we further imposed a permanent restriction, volunteered a permanent restriction on that lot with the subdivision that would permanently restrict any access from the back of the property onto the service road. So therefore, the back of the property will always be the backyard of this house. Furthermore, when we were developing the plans, we were informed, going through the subdivision process, we were informed that because it has a 2-street frontage, technically, in addition to the 25-foot setback on the front of this lot from Shady Oak Drive, the entry drive, it also required a 25-foot setback for a rear fence on the property, which would put the fence in the backyard practically up against the house, therefore precluding any backyard for the house to be built. And this is the first new construction on that street in many years, maybe many decades. So all the neighbors are in favor of it. I believe there were a letter written in favor or non-opposing. The neighbors are excited that we're getting ready to build a new house, but we got to have a backyard for this property. And because of this technical guideline of requiring a 25-foot setback from the property, we can't have a backyard. So I'm asking for an exception, a waiver from this hardship to place the fence on the rear property line, much like every other backyard along that service road.
Okay.
That's my request today.
Any questions of the board for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
at this point of order, the applicant needs to state his address. I don't think he did.
Oh, yeah.
Address,
Yeah.
my address, 5570 Nevius Road. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the address for this property is on the application says 556
556
Shady Oak Drive,
Correct.
which would say that is the front of the property.
Yes, sir.
So it's in line with his statement then.
That's correct.
Yeah, and I could see how that we need to make sure that that's clarified. All right, any one here in either support or opposition to the application today? Okay. All right, thank you, sir. That'll conclude our public hearing on this application. Make sure if we have any conditions here or not. All right, Chair, entertain a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair. Based upon findings of facts A through C and conditions 1 and 2.
Okay, I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Have a good day, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're back to application 1, I believe, which is the majority of everyone here today. This is application 6561 regarding 3768 Spring Hill Avenue and 851 Knoll Street. with it. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jay Watkins with Maynard Nexon here in Mobile, 11 North Water Street, Suite 24290, Mobile 36602. Before I begin, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask indulgence that, given the amount of information and criteria under the special exception, if I could have my 5 minutes and then 1 minute of each other speakers, Father Shields, Mr. Cummings, and Mr. Adams, the engineer, are all in agreement with that, if the board would allow us to be able to have a little time to get through the technical aspects of this.
I'll allow it with consideration for anyone in opposition as well.
Okay, thank you, sir. The applicant before you today is for a special exception under the zoning ordinance to allow a cemetery to be established in an R1 zoning district. You may recall this application came before you in December of 2023 and was held over until today. To refresh your memory, this is about a 5-acre site located at 3768 Spring Hill Avenue, which is about a block west of the St. Ignatius Church. At the earlier meeting, several neighbors appeared in opposition to this application, and the applicant agreed to hold it over in order to allow the parties to meet to discuss their differences. In reviewing this application, it is important to note that this is a request for a special exception and not for a variance. As you know, applications requesting variance must establish a hardship related to the property in order to get relief. In the case of a special exception, this board is asked to review the application with respect to 12 criteria set forth under the UDC. I provided for you at your podiums a list of those exceptions. Given time, I would not intend to read each of those exceptions to you, but we'll just go through them and provide our discussion and description of how we feel this meets the criteria. So beginning with item A, the proposed plan is in harmony with the general purpose under the UDC. The future land use plan reflects this area as being low-density residential. In addition to low-rise residential structures in this district, the neighborhoods here are expected to include complementary parks, community centers, playgrounds, churches, and other religious activities. Cemeteries are regularly found in these districts throughout Mobile. Not only is this site adjacent to an existing cemetery, but if you look a couple of blocks to the south, you'll find the Spring Hill Cemetery, which is in the middle of a heavily populated residential area as well. Pursuant to item B, this proposed use will not have a substantial undue adverse effect on the adjacent properties, the character of the neighborhood, traffic conditions, parking, or other matters affecting the public health, safety, or general welfare. As noted, the proposed site is adjacent to an existing cemetery which has been there for many, many years and apparently has had no adverse impact on the development of the nearby properties. Knowles Street is almost fully developed as a residential neighborhood. The existing cemetery does not appear to have had an adverse impact on that neighborhood to date, and it's hard to understand how expanding that existing cemetery use would change that. Additionally, the fact that the proposed site is within a block of the applicant's church, where adequate parking is available, any potential impact on traffic or parking is minimized or eliminated. Last, most all of the Knowles Street properties would back up to the subject property, so any negative impacts of proximity or view are mitigated, and even further reduced by the substantial vegetative buffer staff has required for this planned site. Addressing criteria C, use as a cemetery for this site is adequately served by and will not impose any additional burden on or the improvements, facilities, or utilities serviced under the ordinance. Criteria D sets out that the site plan reflect the use would be consistent with the landscape, parking, buffering, and tree planting requirements under Article 3 of the ordinance, which this plan does, and the proposed design would be in compliance with the regulations under Article 4, which primarily deal with building height, site coverages, and the like, which all of those would not really come into play with the cemetery use. The only buildings technically would be a columbarium of limited height. Next, the proposed use is compatible with the character of the neighborhood in the same zoning districts given the existence of the adjacent cemetery. And if you look to the nearby Spring Hill Cemetery as another example of cemeteries located in residential areas, that one is surrounded by residential properties, many of which actually face the cemetery. It apparently has had no negative impact on the Sandtown neighborhood to date, and the cemetery is surrounded by properties in Spring Hill and has had little or no impact on those properties. As to item F, most of the surrounding properties are already developed as residential properties. As such, the proposed use will not impede further development or improvement of the surrounding areas. Item G, the use of the property as a cemetery will have no greater adverse impact on the health, safety, or comfort of neighbors other than uses allowed in the same district. Neighborhood than other uses allowed in the same district. You may hear this afternoon the opposition as they feel this should be developed as residential lots. Consider the additional traffic, noise, light pollution, stormwater runoff that 15 or 20 homes could potentially have on this site. What has a greater impact, those homes or the green infield of a cemetery? Other than columbariums, which are of a minimal height, there will be no vertical construction on this site besides the fencing. The hours of operation will be regulated to daylight hours and gates locked for security purposes after hours. There will be minimum, if any, lighting and no noise. The additional green space will be a good addition to the surroundings to improve stormwater absorption and runoff control. Item H questions the traffic impact. As stated earlier, the location of this site is near the church and will take advantage of existing parking, and the design of the plan minimizes any traffic impact on Spring Hill Avenue. Item I of the criteria concerns stormwater and drainage. The expansive green space and limited use of impervious surfaces that a cemetery use provides will minimize stormwater runoff. In comparison to the streets, sidewalks, driveways, and rooftops of a residential development, a cemetery use has a much lower drainage impact. Items J, K, and L all speak to other items such as landscape, irrigation, noxious, offensive, or emissions, vibrations, noise, odor, dust, smoke, or other proposed uses that are not detrimental to the health and safety of the neighborhood, which of course a cemetery would not be any of those things. It's the applicant's position that the proposed use complies with, and in some instances goes beyond, the criteria you are to use in determining whether a special exception is warranted. As I mentioned earlier, there were neighbors who opposed this application at the initial hearing. The applicant has held 2 public meetings, one at St. Ignatius Church and one at the grounds, in order to hear the concerns of the neighbors. The applicant has revised its site plan to try to address those concerns that neighbors raised. The initially submitted application had a site plan which incorporated property that fronted on Knowles. The revised application has removed that Knowles Street property, and a new subdivision plat is pending before the Planning Commission now to create a 2-lot subdivision, 1 lot for the cemetery, 1 lot for the residential lot on Knowles. The Knowles Street lot would remain residential and could be available for residential construction to provide additional housing within the Sandtown community. Again, this change reduces any impact on the residential character of Knowles Street. Additionally, some of the neighbors who attended the meetings raised concerns that bodies could have been buried across the property line at the Rising Sun Cemetery, and there was concern that those graves may be on the subject property. The applicant has met with the pastor at Mount Hebron Church and has been told that their records do not reflect anything like that ever happening. But the applicant is agreeable to the 10-foot vegetative buffer around the border of the entire site, which will eliminate the possibility of disturbing grave sites that might encroach over the property line. Additionally, if a grave site were to be discovered, the church is prepared to treat that in a dignified manner and protect and mark that site as a grave in the to-be-built cemetery. I would ask you whether that same courtesy would be afforded in the event this were developed as a residential community. I don't think they would have the ability to protect it the same way the applicant would. At the end of the day, I hope you find that the highest and best use of this site is as a cemetery. It is in close proximity to the church and well-positioned to be developed and maintained. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board might have with respect to the application.
Okay. Do we have any questions of the board or the applicant's rep?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
You referenced other cemeteries around town that in neighborhoods.
Yes, sir.
Can you specifically tell me what you're referencing?
Well, I provided on the back page of the handout is the existing cemetery at the bottom of Knowles Lane. Also, the cemetery about 3 blocks away in Spring Hill, the Spring Hill Cemetery, which is between Sheps, Mordecai, and bordered by Dilston. The Jewish cemetery is down off of, I believe, Texas Cemetery, maybe Texas Street or Virginia. Also, the Virginia Cemetery, I believe, backs up to the end of Georgia, South Georgia. So I think there are several opportunities in the city where there are cemeteries that are bordered by or adjacent to residential neighborhoods.
Follow-up question. Yes.
You did not mention anything about the Catholic cemetery over there on MLK. Is this a part of your scheme and what you're trying to do here? The layout of that cemetery over there?
I'm not
You're
familiar.
not familiar with it?
No, sir.
Okay.
When you say
okay.
scheme of development, this would be owned by the Archdiocese and be part of the St. Ignatius Parish, which is about a block away, and would be part of their landscape plan. Part of their maintenance and upkeep would be similar in keeping with the church and the school that's there on Spring Hill Avenue.
So you're telling me the Archdiocese does not own or have anything to do with the cemetery that's called the Catholic Cemetery on MLK? Or are you
We may
telling
have
me
to
that
defer this.
the parish owns it?
The parish owns that. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any further questions? All right, thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, do we have additional speakers in support, or did we use up all their time? Okay. Name and address, please.
My name is Ben Cummings, 1 Houston Street, Mobile. I'm the architect for the applicant for St. Ignatius. I'm here to speak on the design of the cemetery. Margaret, could you put up the colored rendering of the layout? Okay, thank you. So this is a colored rendering of the proposed cemetery. Spring Hill Avenue is to the bottom of the page. There would be an entrance gate off of Spring Hill Avenue that would take you straight into the property. The first feature that you would encounter would be a large circular drive. In the center of that drive is a cross, and on the back side of that circular green space is a wall, and the back side of the wall would be some columbarium structures. I've also included, I think that you all have some colored renderings, some kind of photorealistic renderings of some images of the interior of the cemetery. At the Spring Hill Avenue entrance, there would be a gate, a metal gate with some brick piers, and along Spring Hill Avenue there would be a metal, decorative fence and landscaping. I did meet with the traffic engineer, Butch Ladner, and confirmed with him that the placement of the gate would be acceptable to the traffic department and would not impede any site visibility lines. And prior to that meeting, we also met with other city staff and had a pre-development meeting, went through, the whole design with them. Really, the only concern out of that meeting was making sure that the traffic engineer would be satisfied with the entrance gate location, which, according to Butch Ladner, he was. So the site is divided into, a phase 1 and a phase 2. Phase 1 would be developed first. Phase 2 obviously would be developed second. The number of plots and vaults. There's a combination of burial plots and then columbarium vaults. For phase 1, there's about 750 ground plots, and then about 700 vaults. Phase 2 is a little bit larger. There's about 1,460 ground plots and then 400 vaults. I didn't even get, okay, can I keep going?
You've got a minute.
1 minute. We do intend to, fully comply with all of the city requirements. One of the main things is that there would be a 10-foot vegetative buffer around the property. So no plot would be would be placed within 10 feet of the property line, and that 10 feet would be planted so that you can see through it. Some of the other structures, we have, I've mentioned the cross, I've mentioned the columbarium, there's St. Mary's Grotto, and then, of course, the drive is a simple asphalt drive.
Okay, do we have any questions? for
Yeah,
the
Mr. Chairman.
architect? Yes.
Ben, is the site going to, other than the front, is the site going to be fenced? in addition
Yes,
to 10 foot?
there would be a decorative fence along Springle Avenue, and the rest of the property would be secured by a chain link fence.
And what side of the, would that be on the outside of the vegetative?
We would place the fence on the property line, and then the vegetative buffer would be 10 feet in from the property line.
Would that fence be completed in phase one, or would the fence be in stages as well?
I don't know that we've really kind of answered that. I don't see phase, it would be totally done, yes, in phase one.
Okay, and I'm assuming too that a sidewalk is required and will be, if there's not already one there.
Say it again?
Sidewalk.
Yes, there is a sidewalk that is there now, and it will be maintained. We'll cut in a new drive.
Okay. But there is existing sidewalks from the existing church property where people can park at the church and then walk on a sidewalk.
That is correct.
Okay, thank
Okay, any further questions? All right, if you'll have a seat.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, we got time for two others, abbreviated time.
Okay, this will be brief. Eric Adams, Clark E. Latham and Associates. I will be doing the civil engineering work for the cemetery. And I just want to let the council know that the stormwater will be in compliance with the 4 items that were addressed in the report, and that we will meet all city requirements with regard to stormwater control. That's all.
Any questions for civil? All right, and one more. Good afternoon, your name and address, sir?
Yes, good afternoon. Reverend Bryce Shields, 3709 Kimberly Circle, and I serve as pastor of St. Ignatius Church. And while the church has owned this property for over 20 years, it was only about 4 years ago that the suggestion was made to me that we consider a cemetery at the site. And once that suggestion was made, and began to talk about it with our finance council, other members of the parish, and we found great enthusiasm and excitement about a cemetery. Many people expressed the desire to either be buried themselves or to have their loved ones buried in close proximity to the church. This is part of the mission and ministry of the church. It's a very important way for the church to express its belief in the dignity of the person, the immortality of the soul, and the hope of the resurrection of the body. Last Friday, as you know, we commemorated the death of Jesus. If you read the Gospels, you know the first thing that the disciples did after his death is they prepared his body for burial. And they went to a new tomb given by Joseph of Arimathea. The followers of Christ followed that example early on. They built catacombs because they wanted to have their loved ones at a place they could visit and where they could go and have prayers. And so we wish to do the same thing with our property here. And once this idea came up, we contracted with Mr. Cummings and Mr. Adams, whom you've heard from. We had a committee to consider it. We talked widely with members of the parish, and we found out that it would be feasible to construct a cemetery there. And of course, we were happy to note that our neighbors with Mount Hebron Church have owned and operated a cemetery of about the same size for many years. My own parents and aunt are buried in Spring Hill Cemetery. A cemetery is a great blessing, not only for parishioners, but for the community, because it's a statement that just because you've died, you have not been forgotten, and you are part of our community. Last Saturday, I took a walk. I'm able to go by the grave of my parents and my aunt to say a prayer. It just quickens my love for them. It inspires memory and affection, and it builds the bonds of community, because community is not just those who are living, but it includes those who are departed, and we want to remember them. And that's part of our mission and ministry of the church. Now, while it will be a Catholic cemetery, it will be open to anyone who wishes to be buried there. And I also wish to say that from all the plots that we sell, we are going to set aside a certain portion of those funds for maintenance. And they will be set aside in a special account to grow so that maintenance of the cemetery can be provided for. But if you come and visit St. Ignatius campus, you can see how lovely our grounds are. We have a great deal of pride in keeping up our grounds, and they are immaculately maintained, and you can be assured that this one will be also. It will be a blessing to the community. It will be wonderful to look at. It'll be a great improvement over what we have there now, which is just a wooded lot. So we believe that this would be a great use, the highest and best use of this land. Over the years that we've owned it, we have had 3 developers look at it to consider residential, and all of them turned it down because of the constraints of the topography and the ability to develop it in such a way that it would not create great runoff and could be done at a profit. So it's providential, in my opinion, that we have not sold the property and that now we could use it for something that will greatly advance our mission and ministry. Thank you.
Okay, any questions of the board? Okay, appreciate it. I know you all been here for a little while, but I've had a member of the board ask that we take a 2-minute recess, and we'll reconvene. So if you'll bear with us. All right, thank you. Anybody wants to stand up, stretch? How are you? Well, you made everything. We appreciate you being here. Oh, that was dropped. Yes, last week. You get another one? For the 18th? Bless you. Or 16th. Is that regarding the bus thing? That was dropped. He never showed up for his initial hearing. That's what Doug said. We'll verify that. Yeah, that don't help. It doesn't help. All right, we're going to reconvene here. I appreciate your patience. All right, so we've heard yeah. Okay, well, we got 2 back. 2 have returned. we're going to give just another minute for others that may not have returned. So. All right, we're going to once again reconvene, and now, if we will, those that are in opposition, if we can start with everyone. Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I have a question about the time.
Yes, I will give you the same consideration that I gave the applicant.
And I'm not sure what that was.
Extra minute for each.
Okay. May I have a moment to confer with my client?
Please.
Thank you. And will I get?
It's 5, then plus 1 for each of the other speakers, just the same. Okay. Yeah. Is your mic on? There we go. It's on.
Red means hot.
All right.
Hot.
All right.
All right.
Your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Wanda Cochran. I'm an attorney, 465 Dauphin Street. I represent the Sandtown Community Action Group, which is an Alabama nonprofit corporation. The group has existed and been active for a number of years, but it was only back in 2019 that they formally incorporated and began their program to preserve, promote, and protect what is likely the oldest African American settlement in the state of Alabama. My client opposes a cemetery at this location. And if you don't mind, would you put up the site that shows it in context of the surrounding properties? Yeah, that one will be fine. The decision to oppose this application was not lightly made. This is serious business. While this property at one time was in the heart of the community and owned by a woman named Ernestine Anderson, it has, Allen, it had, well, we want to pay Miss Allen her respect. She lived to be nearly 100 years old. And she was the heart of Sandtown for many, many years. Unfortunately for Miss Allen, in about 1999, she broke her hip. She had to be placed in care. Her only assets was this 4 acres. And she's very lucky she had it. The probate court sold the property, and it was used to take care of her until she died. This is not a typical piece of real estate that you normally hear about. As I said before, this place matters to this community, and it's been here a long time. As I said, we do not lightly oppose this. Sandtown and St. Ignatius have a long, rich, and sometimes tumultuous history. To this day, many members of Sandtown are faithful members of this parish. That stated, this property is zoned R1, and as Mr. Watkins described, the zoning ordinance has specific factors that you need to consider in making your decision. I will not go through those factors with you. You will hear testimony today about why this development will harm the community. The president of the organization, Alonzo Yelling, is here. He will testify and he will provide you some important historical background, and he will also tell you about the exciting news that the Alabama Historical Commission has named Sandtown as one of its places in peril. The designation Places in Peril is an important one for a nonprofit organization because it helps kickstart fundraising and bring statewide, local, and sometimes even national attention to a community. We had hoped to bring you the magazine that they published today so that you could see the story and the full color spread, but regrettably, it won't be published until next week. Two other members of our organization will speak today. Oh my goodness.
Continue. You got more time.
I have a minute. Oh, that is a 1 minute time? Wow.
We'll see how it goes. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, Erica, if they can introduce themselves. They will also talk about the detriment to the community. But I think the key point here is that there is one fact I think we can all agree on. A cemetery, unlike any other kind of development, is permanent. The probate rules will require them to file a deed, and it'll be forever. Restricted covenants only used for a cemetery. And what that does to this small community is that takes this property out of the pool of possible development for residential. The property has been a problem for a while, and I understand that they believe it cannot be developed residentially. But Sandtown has spent a good bit of time consulting with professional planners and with developers, and they believe that a creative design, one that is context sensitive and that takes advantage of the natural landscape features that exist on this site, is not only desirable, it is feasible. In closing, I will simply say that the church has made it very plain in our prior meetings that they are not interested in selling this property for residential development. That is why last week, Sandtown made the decision to make an offer to purchase an option on this property for 6 months at its currently advertised price. The idea is that at the end of the option period, they would either close in cash for the stated price or forfeit their option amount. There is built into the proposed option agreement an opportunity to extend the option for an additional 6 months, but at the end of that time frame, if Sandtown is unable to come up with the cash to fund its dream for this community, it will forfeit the money deposited, and it will withdraw any opposition it has to this cemetery. We would ask you to deny this application, or alternatively, delay decision on this application for an additional 6 months to give the community time to raise the funds, spread the word, and make this vision reality. Thank you so much.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Buckley?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
Hold on. Mr. Davis first.
Councilman,
Yes, sir.
Make sure I understood you correctly.
Sure.
This is a mixed parish. Some people in Sandtown are members of this parish, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure I understood that.
Okay, Mr. Metcalf?
Yeah, Wanda, you said, at its currently advertised price. What does that mean?
Right now, the property is on a website, and the purchase price is listed at $449,000.
And what's the website?
Perhaps
Still on
Merrill
the market?
Thomas? Perhaps Merrill Thomas.
Thank
Any further questions? All right, thank you. All right, next. Good afternoon. Name and address.
Good afternoon. My name is Alonzo Yelling III. I reside at 3828 Mordecai Lane, Mobile 36608, right in Sandtown. I'm actually a fifth generation Sandtown resident. I have the fortunate opportunity to live on the property that my great-great-great-great-grandfather purchased early 1900s. A major part of why I'm here today, because I live 2 blocks from the cemetery. My property is not adjacent. But a major part of why I'm here today is in my childhood growing up and getting to know everybody that was the elders that were in the community, just how much they put into developing and preserving their properties as they got older. So it's important to us and to me for what it represents as opposed to just being a piece of property. As Wanda stated, I am happy to announce that we did get the nomination from the Alabama Historical Commission for Places in Peril. The nomination was based on the fact that there's been a lot of gentrification. It's been a lot of corporate encroachment and everything. Sandtown originally started out where what is now Langen Park and went basically down to Crichton. Over the years, it has kind of dwindled. According to my great-grandmother who passed in 1977 at the age of 1979, at the age of 93, Sandtown was still in her lifetime, from what is now Carondelet Dollar General up to where that cemetery that they mentioned was, and it went behind the reservoir all the way over to 3 Mile Creek. So that's kind of the boundaries that we recognize down Museum Drive and to 3 Mile Creek and back up to the Cedars. So it has been encroached upon over the years. And for me and for our community group, it's let's preserve what we have left. That's the last undeveloped piece of property of any size. I know that they said that it couldn't be done residentially, but there are no, in the original Sandtown, there was not a clear-cut subdivision style house. Every house was built within the confines of that property. I still have 25, 30 trees on my property, and in my lifetime, I know 50 or 60 have come down. But it's because the houses were built to what the property was already like. And that's what makes Sandtown as beautiful as it is now. How did Sandtown come about? Back pre-1845, free black men were able to purchase the property. It was not given to them. They were not sharecroppers. They actually purchased it. And it became one of the few safe places for African Americans to live in the Mobile area, or outside of the Mobile area, because at that time it was not part of the Mobile city limits. We talked about the cemeteries. The Rising Sun Cemetery, which is just to the north of it, was developed by the people who developed Sandtown. And it was developed because they needed someplace to honor their deceased. We just want our history and our legacy, our ancestors' legacy, to continue. That's our whole purpose. We understand how important it is to honor the dead. We do. That's not why we're fighting it. It's not that we disrespect the dead. It's that we want to honor what our ancestors had.
Any
Thank you very much.
questions of the board?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
You know, Mr. Yelling, I known your family down through the years, but I have never known the depth of this history that you have brought before us today. My concern is, does the other side of this issue understand your passion and the community's compassion as it relates to preserving its legacy? Is that understood? Have you all talked about that?
I would hope that it's understood, but I can tell you we've had 2 meetings with representatives from both groups. We were not made aware of it until the neighborhood meeting, community meeting that was called on November 9th. And that was the first time we were even invited to the table. I would have loved to have known about it prior to, but we know that's how things go.
There have been reference made here, Mr. Yellen and Mr. Chairman, to Good Friday. Now, the thing is, as I understand it, that as a church representing Jesus, we were reconciled back to God by Good Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it appears to me that if we're going to be true to who we are, we need to deal with the reconciliation process where each one of us on both sides of this issue can come together, because you carried me way back. And I know what it means when you're trying to hold up the blood-stained banner.
Yeah.
So I have a question. There were 2 meetings since the November 9th?
Since the November general community meeting,
Yes.
There had been 2 meetings between our board and committee and St. Ignatius Parish. And that's where that first taking that one piece of property off that they went back to planning on, because they took the piece that was facing Knowles Lane off as an attempt to say we're not going to impact that Knowles Lane. As I've said, this is more than just Knowles Lane and Spring Hill Avenue, even though our group represents probably 90% of the property owners in that area.
One of the other comments last time was about the encroachment on the existing cemetery and maybe some unmarked graves. Has any effort been taken to identify those?
At our last meeting with St. Ignatius, we asked about it again, and we were told initially that they didn't feel it was necessary. We had another gentleman that was there with us who offered to make that happen with the ground penetrating radar, and actually offered to help subsidize the cost of it.
Okay. Other questions of the board? Yes, Mr. Morris.
Mr. Yellen, to my understanding, the property, part of the property is still up for sale?
The property in question?
Yeah.
Yeah, as of, I know Friday it was still up on Merrill Thomas's site.
So have you all and the other party discussed that issue?
We sent our letter, we sent a letter back the 12th of March, stating that what we would like to really see is the residential development. And if they were not willing to do that themselves, that we would like to have a price that we would have to work with so we could seek a developer to work on trying to get it ourselves. We got no response. So on Thursday, what was that, the 28th? Whatever Thursday's date was, we sent a term sheet, an offer to purchase with that 6-month option that Wanda spoke about.
So it is available to anybody who has the funds to purchase it.
That's everything that we can find out, but they have told us that they don't want to sell it, but they have not taken it off they have not closed out the listing.
I think we'll follow up a question with the applicant on that, if you're okay with that.
I'm good.
Okay. Do we have somebody else? Okay, you have further questions for?
No.
Okay.
Chairman.
Mr. Atkinson?
Chairman, I've got a quick question. Ms. Cochran mentioned that y'all have met with developers and contractors to look at the feasibility of developing it as residential development. What does that look like? How many houses are proposed in that design?
We're still in very much in conversation stage, but we have had a developer to walk the property with us. And while he did say that yes, it is going to be a challenge, it's not impossible. And the bigger challenge is if we were going to clear cut and just do a typical suburban subdivision where they clear cut everything and just lay out the street and go, yes, there are some problems. But if we follow the contour of the property and the character of the neighborhood, there is ways to put residential housing in there and still be able to make it affordable.
Okay, any further questions? All right. I think we got time for additional speakers, if you would like. We'll call the applicant. Good afternoon. Your name and address, sir?
Yes, my name is Gary Jackson, and I live at 8589 Tunbridge Wells Drive in Sims. My family was unable to return and build our family home at 3802 Spring Hill Avenue, my ancestral birthplace, because of the decades of neglect from the adjoining property controlled by St. Ignatius Parish. The water runoff, the storm drainage, and soil erosion problems forced us to abandon our birth home. My family footprint remains in Sandtown until this day because my father built a home not too far away from there. I care deeply about what happens to this neighborhood, its people, the property, and how the construction will impact the neighborhood and adjoining properties. The property is currently under development, undeveloped woodlands with deep-rooted trees and shrubs that absorb large amounts of rainwater. It was stated at one of the meetings with the church that the site would be cleared, leaving only those trees that are protected by law. The city has not visited the site in some time, so there is no way to determine whether anything will remain. It is safe to say that the cemetery development will eliminate most of the trees and vegetation and replace them with soil, with sod, gravel stone, underground vents, and asphalt drives. Lawns are very poor in absorbing rainwater or prolonged storm water. A boundary survey conducted in March by myself with this firm at 3802 Spring Hill Avenue. This property has been adjacent to the proposed cemetery. The property is in a flood zone. And as you've heard before, there is many problems right now with the erosion and the rain and how they plan on putting the ponds, rain ponds. We question whether the city stormwater standards for this area are adequate or up to date to control adjacent properties during a large storm, even on heavy rain lasting more than a day. The Rising Sun Cemetery is to the north, is at about 170 years old. What will happen to these graves when the, when the holding ponds overflows during a storm event? What will happen to the neighborhood to the west who are already having erosion problems? Can the city guarantee that the proposed retaining ponds will not overflow in the future? This land was never been developed other than a homestead, and is reasonable to question whether they are unmarked graves on the site. We raised this issue during the meeting. What you have before this board is a neighborhood asking you to not approve the current zoning for the Divine Mercy Cemetery. Sandtown is our neighborhood and our legacy. We are not ready to abandon the dreams of aspirations of this neighborhood. We support the city forward-looking plans for Mobile and the other
If you'll summarize, sir.
and the other neighborhoods that surrounding it. No matter how pretty the design, death with all the problems final to a neighborhood like this one.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I hate to keep asking questions, but the relevance of these statements that's being made, Council, I'm gonna have to ask you and staff. You made several references to the negligence on the part of the city not having been out there to even have a understanding of what's going on. Can someone speak to that?
Stormwater, I think, specifically.
Compliance with the stormwater ordinance for any project, regardless of it's this one or anything else, that does not begin until plans are submitted for review. Plans of that level of detail where they put in the ponds, size the ponds, the pipes, etc., those are not created until approvals from the board are granted. So at this point, there has been no review because the plans have not been submitted.
Mr. Chairman, help me understand. We've been talking about pictures and making comparative analysis, and it appears to me that staff has been informed what the intent is for this land. So you're telling me now that the concerns of this community, they're not relevant until you get some plans from.
No, sir.
Okay,
that is not what I said.
Okay, well, help me.
But, okay. Compliance, if the board approves this request, compliance with the city's stormwater ordinance would be required. But that cannot be analyzed until plans are drawn up.
So preliminary drawings of the site layout is what we've received to review today. as part of the consideration.
Correct.
But the details of drainage
Correct.
and all that would come after
Being-
if we were to approve.
Correct. Size of the ponds, both in terms of the area and in terms of the cubic area, depth of the ponds, how big do the pipes need to be, how much water based on the rain events, all of that analysis for this application and for like the daycare approved earlier, those plans aren't ready for that daycare. They won't be prepared until this board approved their plans, approved their concept.
The same if it was purchased by the group and used for residential.
Identically.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Morris, you have a follow-up question?
Did I understand you in saying that there's construction from St. Ignatius present facilities? Some of the drainage and stuff is running off into the Sand Hill community, causing erosion control.
Yes, sir. Currently, if you're looking at this film right, this picture here, to the left side of the drawing is the location of my property currently. But that drainage over the past 30 years has continued to drain with no assistance in trying to build it up, pull retention walls, anything. And it is constantly, currently eroded enough that I've lost the house that was built on that, based on some trees falling off and stuff from the erosion stuff. And the house that we were going to build there, we can't build because of how the slippage of the soil has eroded the land. So we had to move out to Sims in order to build the house that we want to build here.
Another question. I'm assuming that you did contact the city in regards to this matter. I'm assuming you did contact the city in regards to the erosion control to your property.
I don't understand, sir.
Okay, the statement was made that I said that it appears that the erosion control situation occurred from St. Ignatius' present building situation. When they made the changes to their present facilities, it caused some problems in your community, St. Hill community, with erosion control.
It was being maintained by Ms. Ernestine very well. Trees, property, the line, everything. Once I came back, because I was in the military for 23 years, and so I was coming back and forth. And then I stayed 10 years in D.C. And as I was coming back and forth, my wife, seeing that the property was sliding off in, no one tried to contact us or tell us, hey, look, this is what we're trying to do to maintain it. It just fell in. And that was one, I can't remember the hurricane that came through, but that's when it happened, and the trees and everything else fell in. But no one has been able to address that.
Well, as I say, for legal, does the city check out stuff like that when storms happen, communities, where it occurred and from how it's occurring?
Back me up on this. That's a private property matter if it's involved on a single piece of property. But if there is water coming off of if there is water coming off of other areas, then a complaint can be made through the 311 system to the city, and the city will go out and take a look at it to, address the concerns of where the water is coming from. Right?
And I would suspect any development on the site would have to correct that as well.
I'll defer to engineering, but what Mr. Rossler said is correct. You have at this moment here an issue between two private property owners, potentially. The stormwater ordinance concerns referenced about that previously. When the property's developed, that's going to trigger compliance. it sounds like what is going on here is an existing condition.
Do I have other? Compliance is going to take into consideration not only what's going on that particular piece of property, but if there's water coming from another, across somebody else's property onto this property.
The
All
compound
that will
issue.
be
Yeah.
something that's considered once the detailed plans that show the contours of the land, et cetera, are submitted.
Okay. Do I have other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just to help clarify, and just backing up what staff said, is that first off, there's a road at Knowles, there's a road there between the property in question and the church property to the east.
No, sir.
Yes.
The Knowles Street is separate.
Well, I
It's on the
understand,
right-hand
but
side.
it's between, it crosses, it goes perpendicular, it's north and south. So any water would have to cross the street. But anyway, that's not even here nor there.
Sir.
This board cannot take that into consideration. Not that we don't care, it's just that it's not in our purview. Just to
Oh,
let you
I
know.
understand.
Okay.
I think what, to clarify, any motion we normally make, either in support or opposition, we always say must comply with the normal municipal codes and ordinances. Yes. Okay. Any other comments or questions on the board? All right. Time-wise, where are we at? We have time for one more person? Okay. Thank you. Now you all see why we took this last. We want to give everybody ample time. Thank you. Your name and address.
I'm Erica Jones, and from 1463 St. Stephen's Road. I am eighth generation descendant of the Sandtown Resident and Development here that we're discussing today. And I also wanted to clarify that Knowles Lane is east of this property. It does not run perpendicular or across it. So just for clarification. The church has painted a pretty picture, and we saw the lovely drawing. But if you'll allow me to paint a picture for the future of Sandtown that we envisioned as community members and as descendants of the original settlers of this community. This Sandtown is of historical relevance to the city of Mobile, and we want to see our community develop and grow. We want to see that this piece of land in the heart of our community, which is among the last few pieces of available land that can be developed for housing, is done and used just for that. It's an important piece of property to us, and our mission for housing and residential developments is in line with the city of Mobile's vision and mission for growth in the city and for the housing shortage that is in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. This would create more homes in Sandtown, create more tax dollars for the city, and it would be developed into taxable properties. So this property has not generated any revenue in the past few decades, couple of decades. We would like to see a vibrant, active community with children and swing sets in the backyard. Our vision for our cluster home or even a patio home community would enhance the city's vision for the 3 Mile Creek Greenway Trail as well, because this property is within walking distance of 3 Mile Creek. We've consulted with Bridget Wiles, who is the Chief Operating Officer of ADP, a highly respected urban planning firm out of Atlanta, Georgia, that has done work in many southeastern cities, including Mobile. And now that we have been named in Sandtown as one of the places in peril, she is excited about the prospects for a plan that will preserve green space, conservation, walking trails that will not result in substantial or undue adverse effects on the adjacent properties and property owners or the character of the neighborhood. So much so that the state of Alabama has listed Sandtown as places in peril for the Alabama Historical Commission because they see Sandtown as an area that needs to be protected. It's so important to us that we are willing to make sacrifices, as the offer which was mentioned earlier, to do the work so that our historical community does not become extinct. In conclusion, residential development benefits everyone. It benefits Sandtown with new residents, perhaps children and grandchildren of Sandtown and other Spring Hill residents like myself who would like to return to that area and build and to live with my children and my grandchildren. We'll have a place to return to. The city of Mobile will grow its tax base, And the church would benefit as well with new parishioners and families and children who could walk or bike safely to and from school and church. So everybody wins. The other thing I would like to mention, if, let's see. Neighbors are excited about future neighbors. We heard that in the testimony of other people who spoke in reference to other areas of Mobile. We're no different. I don't see us getting excited about the grand scale of a cemetery. This is gargantuan in relation to the existing cemeteries that were mentioned. Those are very small by comparison. The chemical damage and runoff that is the potential for the neighboring residents is concerning because it poses health risks and health hazards as well that have not been discussed previously. So we have no doubt that whatever development that they're planning will be in compliance with the standards for runoff and those kinds of things. But we question whether the standards that are previously set are unique to this particular property because they may not be adequate if that clear cutting that needs to take place for a cemetery of this scale takes place. So the previous standards that they've already set may not be adequate for something like this, including the fact that they talked about traffic and those other issues, that this will reduce traffic. And I don't see how it would do that because you're going to have the traffic from the actual cemeteries, people coming to visit. You're going to have the burials, the traffic that's going to shut down Spring Hill. This is on a major thoroughfare. So the traffic would actually increase with their plan. If it's residentially developed, that would reduce the amount of traffic. So there are a number of issues that we need to consider, and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Okay, any questions for the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
allow me to ask you to ask her.
To the
When
mic,
when
please.
she used the term, we have made tremendous sacrifices. What do you mean by that?
Well, as a community, we pull together to make sure that the history is preserved, that the people who reside in that area are taken into consideration when land use proposals come up. And one of those sacrifices that we've come together to consider is making that financial offer to purchase the property so that we can have the control to develop it in the future in the way of R1 residential communities. Because if this cemetery takes place, that would be in perpetuity. There's no other use that can be developed on that property, which is in the heart of a residential area, forever. We can no longer develop it in any other way. But if we develop it residentially, things happen 10, 100 years from now. If something else happens, we can still use it for the lifeblood of a community that exists there now and that has existed since the 1840s, before the Civil War. I think that we need to continue that legacy and that history for such an important piece of property, not just in Sandtown, but in the Spring Hill area and in the city of Mobile, which has a vision for growth. And I don't see that a cemetery meets that vision for growth.
Okay, any further questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, I have a technical point of clarification. If I may,
I'll have to defer to council if I could come back and do that because I want to be consistent. Okay, yes. Keep it brief.
The stormwater point that's being made, and I don't know if the engineer,
Direct us.
I don't know if the engineer can address this, but the question is, the city has standards. Every project has to meet those standards. The question is, are those standards adequate on this site? Meaning, what if we have a rain event or a storm that lasts more than 1 day. I don't know what the city's regulations are, but in many communities that I have worked in, stormwater regulations are designed for one rain event on 1 day. If you've got a gully washer, your pond's going over. That is a serious question, and I wanted to just point that out, and perhaps he can address it.
Okay, thank you. All right. Time for rebuttal. And then Ms. Morris had a question. I think we want to get clarification on it.
Would you like to start with the question, or would you?
Yes, we'll
Okay.
start with the question.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Morris. Okay. Your mic, please.
The property's still up for sale, part of it. Is that a fact? Part of the property still up for sale? Okay, just went off? Okay.
So to be honest and clear, the property's been on the market for over 13 years. And the offer rolled in Friday at about noon. And it was not an offer to purchase. It was a request to get an option. They wanted to offer $5,000 to tie the property up for 6 months with another 6-month extension for an additional $5,000. So this is not an offer to purchase. They just want to hold the property up for 6 months. We've been talking with them since before December, and they made this opportunity available on Friday. It's been 13 years sitting on the market. So it begs the question of the timing is all. The church started this project 3 years ago after the rezoning request was turned down. Actually, C.J. Small, the city councilman at that hearing, is the one who raised and said to the opposition, what are you going to do if they decide to expand the cemetery? And the young lady who was speaking on behalf of the association said, because they were trying to make it a veterinary clinic, said, dogs bark, dead people don't. There won't be any noise. So this project's been ongoing for 3 years. Church has invested time and money and effort in engineering and planning, legal fees. So they have got their parish excited about this, and it's a great opportunity for them. So we appreciate the offer. It's a little late in the game at this stage.
Well, in all honesty, don't you think you should have informed them of that?
I beg your pardon?
In all honesty, don't you think you should have informed them of that?
Inform them of what?
That the property was already sold.
It hadn't been sold.
Well, you say, I thought he said.
We just took it off
Took it off the market.
The church owns it, and the church is pursuing this development.
Okay, here's the other side, just for the parishioner. These are members of your Congress. You mean to tell me this is how you do Congress in your parishioner?
I couldn't hear the question, I'm sorry.
I'm asking, these people are part of the congregation of St. Ignatius.
Some of them are.
My
Yes, sir.
question is this how St. Ignatius treat his parishioners? When y'all want
I think the
to
parishioners
conduct a
have
deal?
been, the parishioners who come to church and have been a part of this project know about it and have had opportunities to see the renderings and participate in the finance committee meetings. And so, I mean, any parishioner who's at that church has been aware of this project.
Okay, I hear you. But let me say this coming from me personally now. This is a struggle of my people dealing with the system here in this country. My effort on this board is to try to establish a Mobile with a better future for everybody. Now, hopefully, some of us will grab that and maybe put forth that effort. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
That's all I have to say.
And I'll speak to you, having been a member of the Planning Commission for 12 years. I sat in that chair and had opportunities like this put before us where you really have to scratch your head, and I don't envy the position y'all are in today. This certainly changes the landscape. It changes the dynamic of a community. I think it changes it for the better. This property, whether it is used as a cemetery or it's developed residentially, it will be clear-cut. Whether it's developed as a cemetery or it's developed as a residential community, there's going to be stormwater. There's going to be runoff. The question is the green field of a cemetery with the grass and the detention better or worse than driveways, houses, patios, streets, everything that goes along with it? It's going to be a drainage issue however you develop this. they can't develop this residentially under the current subdivision ordinance for the city of Mobile without complying with the same drainage and detention requirements that this development will have to comply with. To give you a little context, there's a 50-foot drop from Spring Hill Avenue down to the rear of the property. And so you're talking about placing home sites on a grade like this. And so no matter how creative you get, you're still going to have to address that in a residential community. And that is what the three developers, professional residential developers in this community who have had this property either under contract or under a letter of intent to review this for residential development have come back and said, a residential development on this site is going to be treacherous. It's just, you can't develop it in a way that you can pay for the land, pay for the site work, pay for the improvements, and have a economically priced home. So it's hard to put myself in y'all's position because it is a hard call. But at the end of the day, this applicant has provided you the criteria that's required under this ordinance. I don't know that I heard anybody on the opposite side come up and tell you any of those 12 steps that have not been met here. And so, we would request you to apply the ordinance here. I'm excited for the fact that Sandtown has been awarded the Places in Peril. That gives them a great stepping stone to do really good things in their community. We were made aware of that today, talking about notice. They received that letter in January. We just got it when they handed it up to the staff today. So we were not given an opportunity to consider that or think about how that impacts this. But you need to understand, with the limited knowledge, limited research I just did sitting there, Places in Peril is primarily about preserving historic structures that are in danger or potentially archaeological sites. And to be a part of Places in Peril, the owner of the land has to sign a consent and be a part of that application. We have never been asked to participate and certainly did not participate in whatever Places in Peril notification they received. Mr. Yelding lives on Mordecai. He submitted the application. I don't know if that Places in Peril is just for his property on Mordecai or if it encompasses all of Sandtown, but it does not encompass this piece of property. So you need to understand that. And we really feel like this is the highest and best use for this property. It is adjacent to an existing cemetery that has been there for decades. The church is well positioned to maintain this property in a very nice state. This is a property of the parish, not of the archdiocese. So this is going to be tied to St. Ignatius, a block away. So we would ask you to think through the ordinance, think through what's been presented here today, and we would ask you to give consideration to the applicant's request. I'm happy to answer any further questions.
Okay, do I have any further questions?
Thank you all.
All right. All right, that'll conclude our public comment period regarding this application. A lot to consider, obviously, with the various groups' interest. And with that, Chair, open up for discussion.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, my first question is what is within our purview? I heard that stated that this is not within our purview, certain aspects of this discussion today. So before I can vote, I need some clarity on what is within our purview as a board.
Within your purview is the special exception criteria set out in the UDC, which is repeated verbatim in the staff report on page 6 and 7, criteria A through L. That is the criteria that the board has to follow, should follow.
So it's on
when
page 3.
considering a special exception application.
Starting with page 3 on our.
It should also be on the agendas that you have in front of you, I believe. It lists all the criteria.
Okay.
If the criteria are on page 6 of the staff report are quoted verbatim.
It says in green font, special exception considerations on page 6, and then below that, standards of review. It continues for the remainder of page 6, and then on to page 7. Those are the criteria.
Let me explain where those criteria came from. The Enabling Act, state legislative act, which authorizes and vests Board of Adjustments with their authority and power, states in the first paragraph that in creating a special exception category for land uses, the city council may, I'm paraphrasing here, of course, the city council may state the criteria that the Board of Adjustment must follow when considering a special exception. So that's, these criteria were adopted by the City Council to be put into the UDC pursuant to what the State Enabling Act says.
Okay, on G, specifically, it says the proposed use will not have no more adverse health effect on safety, comfort of persons living or working in the neighborhood, and will be no more injurious to property or improvements in the neighborhood than would any other use generally permitted in the same district. Number 1, in making this determination, Board of Adjustment shall consider location, type, height of buildings or structures, B, the type and extent of landscaping and screening, C, lighting, D, hours of operation, or E, other conditions that might require mitigation of any adverse impacts of the proposed development. I think those are kind of the key things that came out of today's meeting. And then the recent designation as a neighborhood, I try to find the exact wording, in peril. All right. Any other questions, comments of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I know this is an emotional issue for many, and I appreciate that. It is not to me, simply because I'm not a stakeholder. I'm not a member of the church. I'm not Catholic, although I've been accused of being a Methodist before. But I'm not a Catholic. I don't go to that church, and I don't live in that community. So I think I'm in a pretty good position personally to be as objective as I can be. But of course, each board member has to do that on their own and come to their own conclusions. But given the criteria in the UDC of Article 5, Section 11, E1, I think that, and this may be one of the first times I've ever felt this way, I think that every single item in these criteria have been met by the applicant. Again, no emotion here. But I firmly, and I've also got over 35 years in the real estate, commercial real estate business. That being the case, I'm going to recommend and make a move for approval.
Okay, with any conditions or exceptions?
No, as written.
Okay, I have a motion to approve.
Based upon findings of fact.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Opposed. All right, motion fails. Therefore, the application is denied. Okay, do we have any other business for the board today? All right, now conclude our meeting today.